Welcome back. I hope these final breakout sessions have encouraged you with the new perspectives on the fantastic investment opportunities in a variety of UK sectors that are on offer. In our final session of the day, we will hear the views of some of the world's biggest investors to really close out the day on a panel chaired by our next speaker. And so, it gives me enormous pleasure to welcome to the stage the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Right Honourable Rachel Reeves MP.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that warm reception. It's fantastic to be here at the Guildhall, and it's fantastic to be here with all of you after such a brilliant day. After the announcements that we've heard today, my optimism for Britain burns brighter than ever. Over £60 billion of shovel-ready investments from companies like ServiceNow, Eli Lilly, and the Manchester Airport Group, which will help create over 40,000 jobs in the UK. That is a sign of the confidence that we now see in the British economy. And this investment will support the growth of businesses, big and small, helping them create new jobs, invest in new technology, and play their crucial role in this government's #1 mission: to grow the economy by being the most pro-business government that this country has ever seen. Now, we will only succeed in this mission if government and business work hand in hand to unlock the huge potential that I know that we have as a country. In our first 100 days in office, we've already begun to put those words into action. Policies to grow our economy developed and delivered alongside business. Removing the blockages in our planning system. Ending the ban on onshore wind so that we can deliver homegrown clean energy. Delivering the Basel reforms to help our financial services sector. Working with the devolved administrations, mayors and regional partners to give them the powers that they need to grow their economies. Resetting our relationship with our closest partners in the European Union, whilst also developing a new trade strategy and re-energising engagement with significant and fast-growing economies, from India to China and with our partners in the Gulf. And reforming our pension system to release investment. This is just a taste of what we've achieved in the last few months and where our priorities lie in the months ahead. And today, at this summit, we are sending a message for all to hear. We're ending years of instability and uncertainty. We are bringing investment and jobs back to this country. Britain is open for business once again. Now, I understand that for every business, stability is the foundation of success. In the next fortnight, I will be finalising my first budget as Chancellor of the Exchequer. And the situation that we have inherited means that we face difficult choices. The first step that we must take to grow our economy is to restore fiscal and economic stability. Because balancing the books by ensuring that we do not borrow for day-to-day spending is not anti-investment. In fact, it is the only way to ensure that government and business can invest with confidence. Discipline on spending, alongside investment in capital, is absolutely essential. The investment which government makes must be sustainable, with debt falling by the end of the forecast. It must provide good value for taxpayers' money, and it must be fully transformative so that we grow our economy in the years ahead. And it must crowd in funding from all of you, from the private sector too. Because investment means more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. It means that our startups can scale up and grow here in Britain. And it means good, well-paid jobs right across our country. Like the £225 million investment from SEA, creating 750 jobs in state-of-the-art turbine production in Teesside. Or £200 million invested by Associated British Ports and Stena Line, creating 200 new jobs in Humberside. Or the £325 million investment from Holtec to help harness nuclear power, creating nearly 2,000 jobs in South Yorkshire. These investments, and many more like them, are at the heart of the Britain that we are building. So I will deliver a balanced approach at the budget on the 30th of October. Fiscal and economic stability, investment over decline, in a budget that will protect living standards, repair our NHS, and fix the foundations of our economy so we can build a stronger Britain. A critical part of that growth plan will be our approach to business taxation. We need to get this right, to balance the books while doing everything we can to drive growth and promote entrepreneurship, to create a tax system which supports wealth creation and increases business investment. That is our objective. And I know that providing certainty is right at the heart of that. The constant changes that we have seen in corporation tax in recent years have caused instability. So at the budget, this government will be outlining a corporate tax roadmap. We will cap the rate of corporation tax at 25%, the lowest in the G7 for the duration of this Parliament. We will maintain a world-leading capital allowances offer with full expensing and the £1 million annual investment allowance. And we will maintain the current rates for the research and development reliefs, which provide generous support for innovation. This is a vital step to deliver certainty and support businesses to grow. I also know that the detail here is important. You came to London not just for warm words, certainly not for warm weather, but you came because you want to understand how we will achieve our plans, how we will harness the opportunities of the future, whether that's the transition to net zero, advances in AI and digital technology, or building on our strengths in financial services. You've already heard today from the Prime Minister and also from the Business Secretary. The Prime Minister set out our plans to make Britain the best place in the world to invest, through economic and fiscal stability, a focus on Britain's standing in the world, and by working with regulators to put investment and growth at the heart of their work. The Business Secretary launched our new industrial strategy green paper, setting out the 8 sectors where we know that the UK has huge strengths and where we can do more to seize the opportunities of the future. Now I will set out further detail on 2 more steps we are taking to unlock long-term private investment. When I became Chancellor of the Exchequer, I made my first big speech 3 days later about the importance of growing our economy. I set out our plans to launch a new National Wealth Fund, designed in partnership with business through the National Wealth Task Force led by Mark Carney. Today, we are creating the National Wealth Fund and making it the UK's new impact investor. The National Wealth Fund will catalyse tens of billions of pounds of private investment into clean energy and our growth industries, like green hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, and gigafactories. From today, we are turbocharging the UK Infrastructure Bank, which will now operate as the National Wealth Fund. It will be headquartered in Leeds with a bigger team, more freedom, and an expanded suite of financial instruments, and more economic risk capital to ensure that the National Wealth Fund's investments can be even more catalytic. The National Wealth Fund will work with industry partners, including our metro mayors, to identify innovative transactions and deliver new, impactful investments right across our country. We will also bring forward legislation to give the National Wealth Fund a broader mandate, extending beyond infrastructure so it aligns with our new industrial strategy. The National Wealth Fund will also work alongside the UK's existing structures to better crowd in private investment. The British Business Bank deployed £3.5 billion to support over 23,000 businesses last year. But we need innovative vehicles that go further and faster, to leverage investment from new sources, like our pension funds, and to improve returns for savers and help our most exciting businesses to grow. If we want businesses here, not just to start up, but to scale up, we need to unlock long-term patient capital from private investors. To do that, we cannot just rely on old methods. So today, we are setting out our plans for the British Business Bank to take a more innovative approach through a new Pathfinder British Growth Partnership. This will create a new vehicle to crowd in pension funds and other institutional investment into venture capital funds and innovative businesses. The British Business Bank is aiming to raise hundreds of millions of pounds and to make long-term investments on a fully commercial basis by the end of 2025. The government will invest alongside the private sector to crowd in funding, to ensure that the British Growth Partnership delivers on this government's objectives, to increase capital for companies, deliver better outcomes for savers, and to boost economic growth. When we said that this government would end instability, when we said that we would make growth our national mission, and when we said that we would enter a true partnership with business, we meant it. In the last 100 days, we have put unlocking private investment at the heart of everything that we do. And today we have set out more than £60 billion of shovel-ready investments right across our country. Those aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. It means new high-skilled jobs, from Aberdeenshire in Scotland, to Blythe in Northumberland, to Erin in North Wales, and many more places in between, with announcements on our new industrial strategy, a new investment minister, the creation of the National Wealth Fund, and an innovative British Growth Partnership. We are delivering on our growth mission, hand in hand with business. The decisions that lie ahead will not always be easy, but by making the right choices to grow our economy, to drive investment, we will create good jobs and new opportunities across every part of our country. That is the Britain that we are building, and that is the difference that we will make together. Thank you so much for being part of it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor, for that exciting shovel-ready vision of our dynamic economic future. And as if that wasn't enough, the Chancellor will be shortly returning to the stage to chair our final and closing panel of the day, reflecting on the value of stability, the UK's comparative advantage. Joining Rachel will be three of the world's biggest investors, Larry Fink, Carol Young, and Bruce Flatt. Larry Fink is the chairman and CEO of BlackRock. He and 7 partners founded BlackRock in 1988, and under his leadership, the firm has grown into a global leader in investment and technology solutions. BlackRock's mission is to help their clients build better financial futures, with the firm trusted to manage more money than any other investment company in the world. Prior to founding BlackRock in 1988, Larry was a member of the management committee and a managing director at the first Boston Corporation. He serves on many boards, including the Board of Trustees of the World Economic Forum. He is co-chair of the NYU Langone Medical Center Board of Trustees, is on the boards of the Museum of Modern Art and the International Rescue Committee. And Larry is also a member of the advisory board of the Singer University School of Economics and Management in Beijing and on the executive committee of the Partnership for New York City. Carol Young became Group CEO at USS Pensions in September 2023. Her career spans over 20 years across in-house and consulting roles, including a decade as an investment consultant. Prior to joining USS, Carol was the Director of Reward and Employment at the NatWest Group. She is a non-executive director of the Pension Lifetime Saving Association and has chaired PLSA policy councils and the Central Board of Investigation's pension panel. Bruce Flatt is the CEO at Brookfield, a global investment firm focused on alternative asset management, wealth solutions, and its operating businesses, with approximately $1 trillion in assets under management. Bruce joined Brookfield in 1990 and became CEO in 2002. And under his leadership, Brookfield has developed a global operating presence in more than 30 countries. He has served on many public company boards over the past 3 decades. And ladies and gentlemen, your chair and your panel. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to Carol, to Larry, and to Bruce for being part of this closing plenary today at the International Investment Summit. And I don't know about you, but I've had a fantastic day meeting so many people in this room and talking about the huge opportunities there are to invest in the UK and to create jobs here. And there's no better group of people than to discuss some of those opportunities than with the panel that we've got now. Can I just start by saying, from the discussions we've had today and the policy development that we've been doing together with you, what are the things that are the areas where you think there's the most potential in the UK to make investments and to grow the economy? You all have choices to invest anywhere around the world. What is it about the UK that you like? Maybe we'll start with you, Bruce.
Yeah, look, I just say what's really important from an international investor is that the table gets set and you know what the setting is and it doesn't change during dinner. You know where the fork is, you know where the knife is. And look, I think the message that's been delivered here is really important. We don't need capital. There's lots of capital in the world. What we need is that table set. We need the environment to be one, and the UK has so many advantages. I think just having that focus on where we're going for the future and the message you and the Prime Minister delivered are extremely important to just galvanize capital from around the world to invest here, because everyone truly wants to invest here. I don't think there's, I go to many places in the world, we all go to many places in the world, and you go to those countries, and there are some you have differing opinions, but some want to invest in this country and some don't. I think if you did a poll and you said, if the table was set properly, you'd get 99% wanting to be in the UK. So I think it's just that tone, and it's and what you're doing, I think, is excellent in that regard, and I applaud you.
Thanks for that, and I really appreciate that sort of vote of confidence in what we're doing. But the truth is, in the last few years, we have missed out on investment compared with other countries. Larry, do you think that can change, will change? And what are the things that we can do as a new government to try and attract more of that global investment here into the UK?
Well, Chancellor, thank you for having us. It's great to be in such a magnificent hall. I think Bruce laid it out really perfectly. Once we understand the environment and understand how we could put money to work and the ease of putting money to work, we will then determine whether it's a good or bad investment. But the key in any place where you invest, you want to understand that you could put that money to work as soon as possible. And then your investors, because none of it's our money, your investors are getting a fair and economic return versus the risks that we are taking. And so you have to then make a determination, where can you most rapidly deploy that capital? And how can you be so certain that that deployment of capital is going to be earning what you expect it to do, and the conclusion of that investment will be exactly what you thought? And the UK is one of those spots where you can do that relative to so many other, let's say, G20 countries. But that being said, as fiduciaries to our clients' money, capital is portable. Yeah. And our job is to ensure that we are going and seeking the best place to put that capital over a long period of time. And we're talking about not investing in a day or a week or a month. We're talking about putting money to work and investing for 10 plus years. And the more certainty we have that we could invest for 10 years or longer and enjoy the appropriate risk return over that period of time, then the more money will be deployed. And let's be clear, capitalism, when it smells an opportunity, the capital will run to those areas. And likewise, when you smell a problem, you're going to run away from that problem. And you see the big shifts in capital. Countries that show that they are wanting to work with the private sector, be a partner with the private sector, are going to enjoy as much capital as necessary to build out. And I truly believe, and I wrote about this in an editorial, and I spoke at a G7 session recently, we are witnessing record levels of deficits in the G7 countries. And no place of the deficit is greater in my country, in the United States. And I think the era of big public finance is over, and especially with declining populations. And so every country that has broadening deficits need to find a way to create growth. And to me, this is what's so exciting about this administration. I hear growth and hear growth opportunities, because we need to find ways of growing out of our deficits. And the only way that I know that we're going to be able to grow out of our deficits is to work with the private sector. As Bruce said, there's far enough capital, but that you want that capital to be invested here in the UK, and that we could enjoy those fair and economic returns. And if that will be the case, you will see capitalism live and well here, investing on behalf of our pensioners and insurance companies that we manage most of the money for. And importantly, that will create the growth that creates great jobs and great opportunities. It will reignite an economy over many years. And I believe the policies that are being discussed with this administration now is really opening up our eyes that this might become the next real destination for capital.
That's incredibly encouraging. Thank you, Larry. And Carol, you invest mainly UK pension savers' money. How can we unlock more of that for investment in those start-up and scale-up businesses to help them to raise capital and stay in the UK, and at the same time get better returns for savers?
Yeah, so USS invests about 80 billion worth of assets to back the pensions of the higher education sector. One of the sectors that's an 800-year success story for the UK, and really is looking to drive a lot of the innovation we've been talking about today. And I would say that for the UK schemes, particularly for those of us who have longer investment horizons in the UK, it should be an absolutely natural home. If we can see that stability, that will allow us to feel like we're investing in the best fiduciary interests of our members, their best financial interests. So I think you do have to think about different parts of the pension scheme system in different ways. It's really just another example of the way that the desire for capital comes in all different shapes and sizes. So as a predominantly DB scheme, we are naturally going to want those very long-term inflation-linked cash flows. So we're really naturally a partner for multi-generational infrastructure projects. But we also want growth, and many of the larger DC schemes are also going to want that growth. And so I think part of what government can do is marry up the opportunities with the type of risk and return aspirations that the different investors have. And I think if you do that and you back that with a long-term stable vision and economic regulation that understands why capital flows and invests, then I think quite naturally you will see the UK being a really desirable destination.
Great, and obviously we've got our pensions review, which is focused on DC primarily, being led by our pensions minister, Emma Reynolds, but we are keen to help unlock that long-term patient capital, both for infrastructure, as you say, but also for some of those fast-growing businesses.
You've also got LGPS in there, and OpenDB is very similar in that regard.
Larry, two of the sectors in our industrial strategy that Johnny Reynolds set out today are AI and digital, and also clean energy. And obviously, AI and digital is very energy intensive. And how do you think you sort of square that circle? We want both, but the more AI and digital, the greater the demands are going to be to investing in clean energy. How do you think you get all that to add up when there's already big pressures on the energy system?
Yeah, at this time, it's really hard to imagine how this all ties in. These new data centers that the hyperscalers are talking about the power needs are as great as 1 gigawatt for one data center. The investment opportunity for 1 gigawatt data center, Bruce and I could talk about it, but it's north of $50 billion for one data center. That includes the build out of the shell and the sourcing of power and then all the GPUs and chips. So you're talking about a renaissance in I would say, in the build out. I would also say what I'm frightened of as we start then deploying the capital and building out these data centers, we're going to have a shortage of electricians. We will not have enough electricians in this country or in the United States. So great opportunity to channel opportunities for jobs. But when you think about 1 gigawatt of power, we're talking about an enormous power needs. I could speak about the United States. In the United States right now, data centers represent about 2% of the power grid. And according to the US government, it's going to go to 8% in the next 5 years. That's 100 gigawatts, just for data centers. Forget about growth. And so the tax on the grid, we're all experienced here in this country, in the US, already a taxing on the grid. There's a threat right now of much higher electricity prices, which is not going to go over with any population. And so the need for renewables, but also dispatchable power, is going to be really one of the big issues that are going to confront every country. And this is something that we are working on right now, how to roll out these gigantic data centers. How do you source power that will not tax the grid? So you need to, they're working on sourcing power at the same time you're building out these. And this is a whole new equation for these big hyperscalers. Never have they thought about, okay, if they're going to build out AI and data centers, they have to now think about where they're going to get the power in doing this. And I think this represents an enormous investment opportunity, but it's going to require an enormous planning to plan power, AI, grid. All of this is just going to require something called cooperation and communication and working together. But let me be clear, we cannot just rely on renewable power, because these data centers are going to need 24/7 power. It is not like a Bitcoin mining operation which can turn off and on, which uses a lot of power. So this is going to be one of the big issues for every government, how to become a first mover in AI in the UK with all its universities and the opportunity. How do you become one of the first movers in the world at AI, at the same time managing the combination of renewables and having power that will be, able to have these enterprises housed in the UK? It's going to be a big, big issue. And in the United States, the whole conversation of AI and power is raising the whole concept of nuclear, small modular nuclear, because if you're going to try to commit to any commitment that you have related to renewables, you're going to have to assume data centers are going to be attached to the grid that's using gas or some power, and how do you overlay that with wind and solar, and you have battery storage. So all of this is going to be one of the big complexities that we're all going to be facing over the next few years. That navigation of your commitment for a net zero, but at the same time being a first mover in AI, and they crash against each other. And so there's going to have to be some form of reconciliation. I don't want to say compromise, but a reconciliation of how to do both properly.
I guess the point that the Prime Minister was making this morning about reforming the planning system so we can crack on with building the clean energy technology is really key, because the time is now to invest in AI and digital. We can't be waiting for 10 years while something gets through the planning system.
You will not be a first mover then.
We need to speed things up, exactly.
No, it's critical to do it now.
Yeah. And Bruce, Brookfield is obviously a massive investor in UK infrastructure, including energy. What are the barriers that you see that we need to overcome to be able to do things faster? And if we do things faster, I think do them cheaper as well.
Look, the first thing I'd say is I think I'd agree with everything Larry said on AI and data centers and green power. But I'm going to put one twist on that, is that the output of all of that, everyone says it's AI. And really what that is it's advanced intelligence and robotics applied to industrial capacity. What that means is we're going to have first an investment boom, if we get it right. But secondly, it's going to lead to the greatest productivity advances maybe ever seen, or at least since the Industrial Revolution. And those two things combined mean that we may have the best 25 years ahead of us that we've ever seen, because we're going to put enormous money into the ground, but not squandering it on things that don't make sense. It's going to go into things that are highly productive and change manufacturing processes and other things like that, which will drive huge advances in productivity. And I think that's maybe the most important thing to think about the investment going on. Look, with respect to the UK and infrastructure, we invest in, as you know, vast amounts of infrastructure, from ports to rail to pipelines to you name it, across the infrastructure spectrum, and enormous amounts of renewables, wind, solar in the country. Every country has its issues, including here, just like including every single country. And the only advice I have, I don't offer much advice to governments, but the only advice I have for anyone is do the best you possibly can to have the least amount of restrictions in front of people prudently, to be able to encourage money to get in the ground and to grow. And if we do that, and people invest here and we create the environment to invest, I think the UK has a chance to be one of the great economies over the next 10, 15, 20 years.
I would urge you that the Chancellor and the Prime Minister focuses on being a first mover in this. As Bruce said, this is going to be the biggest transformational in our lifetimes. The opportunity is there, massive investments, and then massive productivity gains. All of that is why the UK needs to be one of the first movers in this. And that's why the reconciliation of power has to be answered, not denied. Because if you're just battling over the power source, you won't be a first mover.
Chancellor,
yeah.
The amount of money, when government's here, it's going to be a huge investment amount of money. No money is required from government. All of this infrastructure will and wants to be. We want to fund that infrastructure. He wants to fund it. Others in this room want to fund it. There is literally no money required to build all of this infrastructure to lead to these productivity advances. And that means that it's highly productive, but not costing the government a penny.
Oh, it'll
You know
be
what to
revenues.
say to me, Bruce.
It'll be revenues. It'll create new revenues.
One of the things that I hope that business have seen from us, that we don't want to just design policies that are we think are good for business. We want to design policies together with business because we think that those are most likely to succeed. And one example of that, Carol, is the National Wealth Fund. And we had the task force when we were still in opposition that your chairman, Mark Carney, kindly led and worked with the Green Finance Institute. But Carol, you were one of the people who came on board early on that. And I certainly think, but it'd be really good to get your reflections on how, as a government, we can co-design policies with business to get a better impact.
Yeah, well, the first thing to say is that we were delighted to be a member of the National Wealth Fund Task Force, and there are many other members in the room who I know feel the same, and would also just want to recognise the role of the Green Finance Institute in that as well. And I think it is a really good example of how we might be able to work together to co-design. As you say, that's the really the key element. I mean, there is real value to the conversations like the ones we're having today in the room, where we can all recognise shared challenges and shared opportunities. But the task force went a level beyond that, in that it gave us not as much time as we thought we had initially, but still a bit of time to all work together and for business to feed in what we felt was important to make the recommendations. And I think it's really exciting today that we've seen you come back pretty quickly, actually, with a little bit more detail on how you're going to respond to each of those recommendations. I think the fact that you have said that, you know, UK Investment Bank won't run the National Wealth Fund, it will become the National Wealth Fund. I think that's a real statement of intent alongside the expanded role for the British Business Bank. So I think you're starting to pick up on some of the messages we gave about, we used in the National Wealth Fund Task Force this concept of the Swiss Army knife. We said you need to understand that for different opportunities, there'll be different ways that because despite what you have said, sorry to be less positive about where all the capital will come from, we know, and one of the things that the National Wealth Fund Task Force was trying to tackle is that there are important areas where the private sector might not get there on their own. And I think you have in the capability within the National Wealth Fund to design and mix and match and come alongside the risk and return appetites of some of the private sector. I think that could be a really, really powerful model. Of course, the proof will be, does the private sector capital commit, and can the National Wealth Fund deploy it? But I know that all of us who were in the room, many of us who were fiduciaries, wanted to be there because we could see the potential for an alignment between what the government wants for the nation and what we need to generate for our fiduciaries. And so I think it's a really hopeful model for how we can work together.
And what we really liked about the task force and the recommendations that you made and the design of the National Wealth Fund was how we could best use public money to leverage in as much private sector money as possible and get those returns to the whole UK economy. Because, look, as you said right at the beginning, Larry, developed countries around the world are running deficits, and so we've got to use public money much smarter than we have been doing, whether that's in running public services or indeed catalysing private sector investment, and that's what we're determined to do.
And it also lets us have a more positive narrative. I think one thing we'd really welcome that would make the UK an even more attractive destination is if there is a sense that private investors can generate a fair return and come alongside government and be achieving the things that we all want to achieve in terms of jobs and energy security and other things. And the opportunity to have a more optimistic and forward-looking narrative on that, I think, is another real positive.
Well, thank you very much, Bruce, Larry and Carol, for being part of this final plenary. I said in my speech that after today, my optimism for Britain burns brighter than ever, and I really mean that. It's been a fantastic day. Thank you to all of you for being part of it. This is just the start of an ongoing relationship between this new government and business and global investors around the world. Thank you very much for being part of today, and I look forward to seeing what comes next. Thank you very much.